Good evening, everyone. Hi. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Get yourselves comfortable. Welcome to Talks with Tanya. Hi. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm really excited today. We are broadcasting directly into onto another stream for another group called Advocacy Works. Welcome. Welcome, my friends from Advocacy Works. Yes, yes, yes. And I have your beloved Senator Connie Johnson in the green room, just waiting to come on. Hi, my people in Delaware, California too. Yes, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining. We just want to check and make sure that we are live. So go ahead and give me a comment. All right. Thank you, Antoinette. Yes. Oh, I know where you would be. We all have our assignments to do. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Come on in the room. Make sure that you share, invite, because you never know who might need a word. Hey, Tanya. Tanya Williamson was just on my show yesterday. Woo! And she shared, from the bottom of her heart, an amazing guest. And if you missed the replay, you want to go back because she really shared information for both for us as citizens and as entrepreneurs. We have work to do. But if you put in the work, if you put in the work, the reward is yours. So thank you so much for joining us. And she just came she was on the road. She wasn't even off the road. She found herself a place to park and she went ahead and took time for us. So I appreciate that. I am just going here. Make sure we are live. Okay. All right. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. And before I get into it, I do need to handle the business. Okay, have to handle the business of my sponsors, and also to give you some community updates information that is going on for us here in the state of Delaware. And let me just start with that. I promised my hermano, brother, Apostle Frank Burton, that I would share this. It's important and actually relative. There is a town hall, and it is about the need for law enforcement system and the need for reform in the area of police tactics, racist policing, mass incarcerations associated with the racial disparities in our prison populations. Such a timely, when he sent me the flyer this morning, I was like, this is right on time. I always say that if you are not part of the solution somewhere, doing something, participating in some way, I think you're part of the problem. So, we talk here on Talks with Tanya. But this is, his event is scheduled for July 14th at 7 p.m. from 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. Let me just rearrange some things here so we can so we can see. From 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. It is, they're going to have some panelists. Matthew Horace, the author of The Black and the Blue, which is an affirmation of the critical need for criminal justice reform. Mr. Horace served 28 years in law enforcement. Also, Colonel Nathaniel McQueen Jr., the former superintendent of the Delaware State Police, Secretary of the Delaware Department of Safety and Homeland Security, Corey Priest, and also a staff member of the Department of Justice and the Delaware Attorney General's Office, and Apostle Frank Burton, who is a veteran law enforcement officer. And this is something that you don't want to miss. So go to Eventbrite. Go to Eventbrite, and you will need to register for that event. If you look on my page, either my personal page, Tanya Bain, or Tanya Inspires, you will find the information there. Again, an opportunity to be involved on the criminal justice front. This is exciting. All right, and let's go back to our, about to call it announcements, but they are announcements. All right. And we are still following through with our Fill the Drum fundraiser for the young ladies of the AAYLF. Everything that you donate to the cause. All right, and I will have the website running on the ticker. It is also on my page. We want to bless the young ladies with these donations because it will help save them from childhood marriages, from forced childhood marriages, which really impacts their entire life, and also an opportunity to have the use of some safe, all-natural products with Jewel Premium Sanitary Napkins. So we thank them for their ongoing support. And then, let's see. All right, let's, well, I'll tell you what, and you can find this on my page as well. Last night, she had her night out. Her launch party was last night, and that was a beautiful event. So you'll want to go on my page or Rose, Real Rose Petals, all right, to catch the replay of that. And let's not forget Cover Classic Wednesdays at the Real Rose Petals, so you can get an amazing entertainment in the evening. All right, so that is Cover Classic Wednesdays. All right, thank you, everyone. And thank you for my sponsors. I'm really excited. All right. Hey, Danielle. Yes, girl. Welcome, welcome. I'm always happy to see you. Yes, thanks for joining. All right, so what are we doing on Talks with Tanya tonight? I'm really encouraged. I'm grateful to be associated with some amazing guests. And this evening, we're going to be talking about one of the major issues that has come to the forefront with regard to, the issues at hand. It impacts everything. It is, it's not so much on the news front as much anymore, but it's clearly as important, not only today, but as we move forward. And I'm going to have my roommate uh, from not long ago, Senator Connie Johnson, retired from Oklahoma. I'm going to bring her on screen. Come on down, girl.
Hey, hey.
Hi.
Hi, Tanya.
Hi.
How, how are you?
Hi. Thank you for taking time again.
Hey, thank you
Ooh,
for
you look
your advocacy.
beautiful.
Thank you. This
Yes.
is hibiscus
Yes. And
is my favorite
welcome.
flower besides the rose. So thank you.
Oh,
Can you see it?
yes, yes, yes. And welcome Advocacy Works. Yes. All
Color
right.
scheme, all of that.
All of
Uh,
that. Yes, yes, yes. You got it. Got it in order. Got to get that branding in order, ma'am.
yes, ma'am. Working
Scoot a
on it.
little
Thank
bit
you.
to the, I think it's going to be the right. Yeah, there you go. There you
Okay.
go.
Okay, good.
So we can get the full hibiscus in here. And you. And
And
look
I
at
want to
those. Where did you
just
get those?
So I got these from a councilwoman in Nevada. She's with the Navajo Indian tribe, and it actually has a necklace that goes to it. But I had this necklace on earlier, in case you can see what that is.
Oh,
Anyway, I'm a
yes. A little
cannabis
cannabis.
advocate, right? But
The
the
mother of
earrings are
cannabis.
just
Yes.
they're straight up Native American Indian, which I'm part Choctaw, and just beautiful. These are handmade. Um, we can get her because the tribe is having difficulty right now
Mm-hmm.
supplying PPE to their members. They're like 10,000, and the rate of COVID there is like twice what it is in the United States. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Comparatively speaking, and so we were able to facilitate a significant donation coming out of Washington State. A guy by the name of James Buchanan actually donated some masks to them, and we're she reached out, and we had made a connection in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when I got this beautiful jewelry, and some stuff had happened. I think she got ripped off, and she needed to sell some stuff. So this is her handiwork. These are so well made. The backing on them is just amazing. And I don't know. I mean, I think I'm not sure how much, but see the quality of that clip.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, that's a commercial for her.
Very
But
good. Very good. We
but
need
yeah,
that.
it's all a part of advocacy on
It's,
behalf of people who are needing and
it's
deserving of help to navigate
mm-hmm,
this
mm-hmm.
process, this policy process. So
And especially our indigenous brothers and sisters who are really, it doesn't matter where you are in the U.S., totally left out of the picture. Totally left
oh
out of the picture. It's
yeah, yeah, totally, totally.
that's something. We are going to come back with a show on kind of an update on COVID 19. That's an
But
ongoing issue.
to our topic tonight,
Yeah.
the Supreme Court ruling last week regarding Oklahoma being predominantly Indian territory, Indian lands, right? It was behind a criminal justice case, and I know that's what we want to talk about this
Yes.
evening. Um, the and it's just kind of really scuzzy because this guy is not refuting whether he was guilty of sexual molesting a 4-year-old child. He was just pleading that Oklahoma state government had no right to prosecute him. And in fact, he should be prosecuted at the federal level. So that's what they ruled. But the ruling will have other implications with regard to the land where Black Wall Street is. That's land that was acquired as a result of the 1866 treaty, in which the 5 slaveholding tribes were required to give their enslaved people their freedom as members of the tribe and land,
Hmm.
right? So Black Wall Street and 59 other all black towns in Oklahoma came about. Well, the other reality, Tanya, is, and so I really love for your listening audience to appreciate that essentially the courts held that we had to honor our treaty with them, and that in fact is their land, right?
Mm-hmm.
For purposes of criminal justice issues. But it said it's their land. So it could have anything to do with environmental issues, with other types of zoning issues in the state of Oklahoma. They are a sovereign nation, right? So, but the other side of that coin is these same sovereign nations have not honored the treaty insofar as I can determine with regard to be doing right by the enslaved people, by the black people. So Oklahoma has a colorful history.
Hmm.
But here's the opportunity to also require the tribes to honor the treaty and give the black people full access to all the benefits that come with tribal membership, which right now we're not all getting. My great grandmother was a Choctaw. I'm not on the Dawes Rolls, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole Dawes Rolls was a political process that was open to corruption if you had the money, and so you had a lot of white people. They called them $5 Indians, buying Indian citizenship for $5, and they had no Indian blood whatsoever. Whereas true black people were denied placement on those rolls. So that was all a part of the role of racism in Oklahoma. It's foundational here. The politics of he who has the gold rules. So yeah.
You know, it's the behavior, all right. And this is what we talk about, institutionalized. All right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's, and look at you.
Sorry about that.
No, don't. No, this is Talks with Tanya. We do that, except I didn't have no fancy watermelon.
I just came from an event called Cannapalooza in Oklahoma,
Okay.
and a black some black ladies make this. It's called Margarita Mama, and it's served in a pineapple with 3 pineapple slices. And I had the orange slushy version, and it's very good. It was very refreshing, and so it costs like $15. But if I go back out there tonight before 10, I can get a refill for $5. So sisters got it going on. I'm like,
Yes.
okay, yeah. And I mean, there was like goo gobs of people out there last night and today. This is an event
Good.
put on by a cannabis entity lady that I know, and they had patient doctor recommendations there available for $25,
Mm-hmm.
along with a processing fee to actually upload people's applications for the medical marijuana card in Oklahoma. So
Mm-hmm.
it served and I finally saw a lot of black people going in, signing up, which is,
Okay.
disproportionately we've been impacted by this industry in the criminal justice system,
Yes.
but we are not being engaged in the medicinal and the economic benefits that come with this industry. And I'm just going to say, this is the industry that is doing the best in the state of Oklahoma right now.
And so, why don't you educate us a little bit about the correlation to
Mm-hmm.
criminal justice reform and the cannabis movement, the medicinal cannabis movement in the state of Oklahoma. And
Sure.
ladies and gentlemen, so I don't want us to miss the connection here, okay? Because when, and you know this, you've seen this, when something is to the benefit of some folks, then it's okay, to move ahead. But they are not very forthright in in taking care of the impact of the changes that that are made, for us.
Yeah. So medicinal cannabis in Oklahoma was approved. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yes.
My phone was about to die, so I have to take the earplug out. But voters approved medicinal cannabis in 2018 with a record margin, 57%. Um, and it was literally the culmination of my years of advocacy. Let me get this right. My years of advocacy when I first introduced that bill back in 2007 in Oklahoma, when no one was willing to talk about it. I took a lot of hits for, like I got called a lot of things, like the weed smoking senator. Um, so
Yeah.
um, ultimately, I introduced the bill every 4 years. The legislation never got a hearing. It got a hearing 1 year. And in the meantime, we're also talking to people about when you see that a policy body is not going to take action, that they have the additional ability using the initiative petition process in Oklahoma, and those laws differ in many states, in different states. But that was something available to us. We actually floated a petition in 2014 during a U.S. Senate campaign. Uh, this one that got passed in 2018 was during my gubernatorial campaign, and it passed. Now I didn't win governor, but that's the story that's still in
Not
the
this
history.
time, not the last
At that
time.
time, right? It wasn't the right time, right?
So
So
let me just so that people understand. Okay, so what you're saying is in the state of Oklahoma, if something isn't passed through the legislature, there is an avenue called the initiative petition where the people can move a bill forward
a
for a vote.
policy. Hmm.
Okay.
And so, you can, there's a voter threshold required to amend the Constitution. We amended the Constitution and put the death penalty in it in 2016. Um, but this was not a constitutional amendment. It was a regular initiative petition, which meant it was statutory, which means that the legislature can then come back and also amend the statute. And that's what they did in an attempt to flesh out some missing pieces, because our law is the most liberal in the United States. It's
Mhm.
by far. I just came at this Chronica Palooza thing from taking a friend to get his card, to get his doctor recommendation. And the doctor talked to him, and she said, "Well, now, what do you think is the main thing wrong with you?" And he said, "Well, I got gout and then hypertension." And she asked him a few other questions. He said, "Well, you're set." So we went from there to the next place, got his application uploaded. It's like $22.50 here if you are on Medicaid or Medicare or a veteran, right? Or $104 if you're not. But this service was $25 for the doctor recommendation and $25 for the upload assistance.
Mhm.
See, so those are niches in this industry that are making a difference in the economy of the state of Oklahoma. Somebody made a business out of that, right?
Right, of
Um,
getting the approvals, of
yes, and
getting the
there's so
approvals.
much. There's so much, so many niches, and I was like out there really to meet someone and talk about how we start to bring these things together for our community. For
Mhm.
us to be able to function in tandem and have some influence going forward. So,
And
but
how does this, okay, so you have and Gwen is joining us. She just came in. I'll bring you
okay,
up in a second, beautiful lady. Um, so, medicinal marijuana is approved in Oklahoma. And I don't know what's going on in Delaware, but I know that we have some dispensaries, okay, in Delaware. But what
okay.
is not happening as it relates to the criminal justice system? And I'm going to put that question out there, and then I'm going to bring Gwen up.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Gwen.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Hello.
Yes, yes. Well, and we
Okay.
Okay.
were we were we were talking about the correlation between medical cannabis and the
Mhm.
criminal justice piece.
Mhm.
And Tanya, to round that out, I know I got off on a tangent,
No, no,
but
no, that's fine.
to round that out, I introduced that bill because children were being raised by their grandparents disproportionately behind their mothers going to prison. We incarcerate more women than any other place in the world, and for mostly drug and addiction related crimes, right? And black males in particular for simple possession of marijuana. So my goal was to find any way possible to stop that. Medical cannabis was the easiest way. I thought. I found out that they weren't going to pass that either until the people spoke, right? So that's why I introduced the bill in the first place. But in the process, like I told you, of reaching out to the people, educating them about the process and what to do when your legislators won't act, we held seminars at the Capitol where we talked about the ABCs of CBD. This is where I met these families with these children with Dravet syndrome who were having seizures, 50 seizures in a minute, crazy kind of stuff, who were testifying about how this substance was making a difference in their children's lives. In fact, there's like 24 families who left Oklahoma and moved to Colorado to get access to cannabis, right? So I learned about the medicinal benefits, and as when I left the campaign trail on the governor's race, I went to take care of my mom. I dropped everything. Cannabis was the thing that made the difference in her transition. She was not loopy as she didn't want to be. She was peaceful. She was in no pain, you know, and it was the greatest accomplishment of my career to have pushed a policy that made a difference in my mother's world, the woman who made it possible for me to come to Penn. Okay.
Hello.
So I mean, in so many ways, literally and figuratively, and literally, just to bring you up to speed too. I dropped off the scene for like 2 years, so it got approved. I was out of the mix. I come back a year and a half later, 2 years later, and this industry is booming in Oklahoma. It's the only industry where you'll see somebody at the dispensary at midnight and it's 5 cars deep in the midst of the COVID. So it's having a tremendous fiscal impact on this state, even though they don't want to talk about it, don't want to talk about where the money is that comes in from it. But ultimately, I'm going to get us back on topic. We want to talk about policies like they have in Illinois that require equity so that 25% of the income that comes from this industry will be put back into communities that were disproportionately impacted and deserve reparations right now. We have people serving life without parole for a joint, for a doobie in Oklahoma. We had a crime of life without parole for making hash.
Mm.
Our system is the foundation for a private prison industrial complex. So we have to create commodities to fulfill the 98% bed occupancy guarantee that we give them, and that then allows them to make money to turn around and influence policymakers to make even more and more felonies, right? So
But
we have all that drama going on, and in the midst of it, Gwen Fields showed up in my world, right? She was my executive assistant, and together we proposed legislation, game-changing legislation that is still in some ways being put into place today. Getting the governor out of the parole process, we put that out there first. Decriminalizing simple possession first time of any drug. That got passed in 2016. And then medical cannabis got approved. So all of those proposals that I had proposed, like in 2009 when I was in the Senate, are becoming law as a result of the people's actions.
So,
Mm-hmm.
what is not happening, Gwen? And welcome, Gwen Black. Let me tell you, Gwen just came out. I mean, literally, all right, came out of class. She is a law school student. All right, so I'd like you to share your story, if you would, with my audience, and then just kind of bring us up to where we are, kind of now from your view.
Sure. I'd like to say something really quickly because when I was in the green room waiting to come in, I was listening to you all's conversation and piggybacking on what Connie just said. We need to be thinking about nationwide the revenue from marijuana becoming part of our reparations, and we need to start that conversation. When I came in, you were asking the question, what was going wrong with the marijuana laws that have changed in Oklahoma to date. And the glaring thing that I saw was that even after they decriminalized it and made that decriminalization retroactive, people still had to either go back to court or go to a commutation board instead of those people just being released because the maximum sentence was 1 year. So just that rounds out just that what you were speaking of just now.
Mhm.
I really want to get into my story, and like you said, I just got out of class. Somehow my link on my computer wasn't working, so I'm literally on like a tiny iPhone.
Wow.
So I'm gonna try to be real quick, and then maybe jump off and find my iPad.
Okay, you're
Cause
perfectly clear. If you
oh,
haven't
I'm okay.
charged, you're perfectly clear.
And you
I'm
can
on
hear me,
my
okay?
iPhone too.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, my story started before having met Connie. I went to prison for what's best known as hot checks, writing checks to the grocery store. Okay, first time offender, and there's a lot of facts involved in that I don't want to get into simply because it takes too long. But I was sentenced to 69 years in prison. I was released in about 5 years because of learning the law and kind of fighting for myself and so on. And wait a minute, let me back up and say that God did that because otherwise that would not have been possible. Um, and I've seen his hand in everything along the way because when I left, I got out of prison in November of 2004. In January 2005, I was in college. I transferred to the University of Oklahoma, studied petroleum engineering, graduated. I did a few internships with Chevron and ExxonMobil. Graduated and was going to accept a position. Wait, I lost the earphone, y'all. Accept a position and mind you, I've always wanted to be an attorney, and my idea was if I could get into oil and gas law, that would fund the criminal justice work because most people just don't have the money to pay for it. So this
Right.
is my grand scheme. So I disclose to them fully initially to the offices in California what my background was. They ran everything. When it came down to the offer a quite um, proudly privileged, red faced, angry man from Houston came and told me basically I should be treated like Bernie Madoff and I couldn't have my job. So I went back to school. Now, another mentor that I love dearly, Susan Sharp, is a criminologist. She was my professor at OU, but she's also actually one of the founding editors of the what's the Criminology Journal, and particularly chronicles how the justice outcomes affect women and families. So I went and talked to her. She was friends with Connie, Senator Johnson. And she said, well, you know, you should talk to her. And in my heart, which is a feeling that most, particularly women when they get out of prison have, so I was like, she's a senator. She's not going to want to talk to me. I'll go up here to the Capitol. I'll play the game. I'll satisfy Susan. I'll go. And we never stopped talking. That was like 11 years ago, 12 years ago. I remember it as plain as day. I went into they were in session, and so I went into the outer chamber. She came out and started to talk to me, and we just clicked and we talked. And she looked at me like a person.
Mm.
So that was energizing for me in terms of, because you feel like the world is crashing in on you when you're facing all of the collateral consequences of coming out of prison, period. And for you to work for a company for 3 years and they pull the rug out from under you for something they knew about just because they could, made that vulnerability more amplified. But anyway,
Well, Gwen,
so
and let me throw in that whole perspective of women and incarceration.
Yes.
mm-hmm,
It coincided with my master's program.
mm-hmm,
That's
yes, it
an
did.
important piece too. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
And to that end, Susan Sharp has a book. You can just Google it. I think it's on Audible now, but it's called "Mean Lives, Mean Laws," and I'm one of the characters in the book. But that's not the point. The book talks about the different outcomes, and one thing in particular that um, women, when they break the law, are viewed as not only having transgressed the law, but transgressed their role or place as a parent, a
The
mother,
moral
etc.
order. The
So
moral
that's
order.
it's the moral order. Yeah. So that's
Yes.
why Oklahoma has for the last 2 decades incarcerated more women per capita than anywhere on earth. The reason that is changing is because when the drug war started to impact uh, middle class and upper class white families through methamphetamine and opioid use, then there became a lot of policy changes.
Hmm.
Nonetheless, I don't want to get off on that tangent. That's how I met Connie. She had a passion for people, for human beings. Like, and she didn't make, I mean, like, we're talking about race, and that's always a complex dialogue that the numbers don't lie. There is racial disparity, there's discrimination, both inherent and covert. But Connie, like, looks at people as people. Not, I mean, color is secondary, so um anyway,
So
so yeah.
I just wanted to interject
Okay.
some of the comments from my viewers. Congratulations, yours is a powerful story, and still she persisted. Congratulations, thank you,
Oh,
Jesus. I mean, and these are, let me tell
thank
you,
you.
Danielle Hall, okay,
Okay.
is currently running for lieutenant governor here in the state of Delaware. Okay,
Okay.
um,
Okay.
and we have Tanya Williamson, who is a powerhouse, a powerhouse entrepreneur with a heart
Awesome.
for the community. Thank you for joining Laverne. Okay, she is actually she is a retired editor, and someone I had just been speaking about early earlier this week about our initiative, Connie.
Hmm.
But there are some people here who are making a difference. Okay,
Well, you know what? Thank you
and
so much for having me on, and thank everybody for the encouraging words, because there are still days that I face those things, and I don't say that as a pity party type statement, but
yes,
it's something that in and of itself needs to be addressed, which is not house. I mean, housing, all those things, of course, are necessities, but the mental status
mm,
of people coming out of prison and the post traumatic stress disorder um, that goes along with it. That's something that needs to be on the radar. So I just wanted to put that out there.
yeah.
But let me say this: I can see you guys like from the neck down. If
Okay.
I turn my phone, will I be able to see you?
Well, I have. You know why you can see us from the neck down is because how I have us actually set up.
Oh, there you are. I was gonna say you have beautiful necks.
You know what? Only sisters. Okay.
Mm.
Only sisters. But I wanted to share with the audience because as a result of this, I did just some research. And you guys know the numbers better. But in the state of Delaware, okay, because most of us or many of us are from Delaware, since
Mhm.
1980, all right, the number of women in jail has increased by 1,200%. Okay,
Mhm.
by 1,200%. And that's, I mean, that's ridiculous.
That's the criminalization of African American women primarily for drug charges. Because if you track those numbers against the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the crime rate didn't increase, particularly the violent crime rate did not increase, the incarceration rate increased.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what's happening in the state of Oklahoma, and Connie alluded to this earlier, you have a privatization of your prison system. And as I understand it, that regardless of how many people that they have in there, well, there's motivation to get them in there,
Mm-hmm.
to get paid. And regardless of who's in there, they're going to get paid for a 98% occupancy. So that's like a hotel. All right.
Well,
Whether they come or not, we're getting this money. Might as well bring
yeah,
it.
when we started getting resistance and started having policy change, that particular policy changed because it was so outrageous for so many nonviolent people to be incarcerated. So what the game is now is likely the same game going on in Delaware, and that is people on probation and parole, or people that are diverted from prison
Mm-hmm.
are subject to your analysis tests, reporting, the things that go along with correctional control. And so they've just changed their business model. They still have the control because, the subjects have to pay the money. So they make the same bottom line, they just switch the game.
Exactly. They just switched the game. So you work on some, from your view, the scope of the problem and the solution. I mean, that's kind of getting to the end of it, but
Okay.
you would know.
What I think is in this moment, because of what the unfortunate tragedy with George Floyd and how it's activated people. And I think since 2016, we've got a lot of mixed race people, a lot of people that have become more conscious and become more aware of the problem, which is over incarceration. Period. And policing. Those two things go together because, and that's a whole long story in itself, but police are funded. The reason they keep saying defund the police, a lot of police funding is around outcomes of arrests, not the quality of arrest, not the cold case, but sheer numbers. And so when police departments are motivated in those ways, and I'm sure every state has to some degree gets funding financially, then they that's their goal is to lock up more people. How do you do that? You get low hanging fruit. You go to communities of color where you're going to catch a kid smoking a joint, or you're going to see somebody. It's easier.
And they're going to have
What?
warrants. They're going to have outstanding warrants.
Well, even if not though, it's easier because of the fear that they have instilled in us across generations to pull over a black man and for him to look nervous, and then the police to write in his report the reason he pulled him out and searched him is because he looks nervous. It's a
Exact
game.
service.
Right, right. But what the solution is for attorneys across the country to become engaged in impact litigation and organizing, or bringing the people together that are organizing to change things like qualified immunity, prosecutorial immunity, because they make the decision on who to charge and how to charge them with whatever it may be. So there are a lot of different things, but I think the main thing is when you start to go to the ballot and hold people accountable, and then you start hitting them in their pockets for their money, all at the same time, these people ain't gonna know what to do with themselves. You see what I'm saying? I mean, they're gonna have to bend somewhere because at the end of the day, black people, people of color, melanated, that may not be a word,
It is.
people with melanin are the majority, not the minority.
Yeah.
We just thought the term has been flung around so much that we don't really understand and have not understood the power we've had. And so, it's just like conditioning an animal. If you kick a cat or a dog every day, he's gonna expect to be kicked.
Yes.
He doesn't realize he got teeth and claws. He could he could possibly do some damage. But so we have to start to educate the young, activate the ones that are energetic, that have platforms. Like your platform needs to be connecting with other women's platforms and more red table conversations. I'm very, very glad to see the Black News Revolt. I don't know if you guys have that. It's actually on our cable. I'm in Minneapolis, or near Minneapolis right now. So having this medium of the internet means that we have power to say what we want to say within the privacy and safety of our own homes. We just have to viralize those messages. And, like, yeah, I'm a little militant. I won't even say
Well,
that on,
and I think you're
but
alluding to what advocacy works is about, and that is empowering people to exercise their voices via their votes and guaranteeing their votes, but to hold people accountable based on knowing what the issues are. So this issue of criminal justice reform and even medical cannabis policy is one that I believe this time around our people are educated now, or being more educated, and the George Floyd movement is doing its thing.
mhm.
Um, these are going to be what do you call them? Deal breaker issues. Criminal justice reform is going to be deal breaker issue. We've got an
But
election coming up in Oklahoma for Oklahoma County Sheriff, and
mhm,
right now there's a black Democrat, but there's a black Republican in a runoff with the incumbent. If this
he's
black
fine too.
it
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm
Keep it
sorry.
real.
I'm
This
sorry.
is
Yes,
this is talk
anyway.
with Tanya. We keep it real here.
I'm just saying, I
Anyway,
don't know what his
anyway,
policies
girl.
are. I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry.
But
Go ahead. I'm
anyway,
sorry.
if he were to win that runoff, right, there would be two black people running for sheriff in Oklahoma County. For the first time in history, we would have a black sheriff.
I believe somebody would kill him. I honestly think they would get killed. I
Well,
mean, and I
they know
don't
the
say that
risk.
jokingly.
No,
I
I
mean, I don't.
believe you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, of
So let
course,
me ask this question. Okay, so what is the significance of that? Because we talk about the elections and the importance of the local elections.
yeah.
What's the impact of that? What power do they gain as a result of that position?
So, so the sheriff, the county sheriff, is the elected law enforcement position. Now, to the extent we have police chiefs in cities and what have you, technically the way it works out in Oklahoma, they don't really have any say so over those people. I think they should because they are elected, but they have the platform to be more progressive and to even use their voice in these cases in Oklahoma City, like where so much police brutality is going on and people are dying in police custody. That sheriff then has the voice.
And I think if I could piggyback, I don't know. I think she
Yeah.
might have went away.
Yeah, we lost her.
Um,
Just come
if
back.
I could piggyback on that, what is even more important, because that one sheriff is not going to be a significant, game changer, particularly given that he's in such a red state that he's going to be constrained just by the existing policies and the powers that be. But I think what it does is it energizes young people to see a Black person be able to make it. I think collectively across the nation in these races where there are African American men and women running for whatever, it takes us out of that perpetual state of apathy where everybody's like, well, my vote doesn't matter. Well, it mattered. We got Trump because people didn't vote, right? So if it has an energizing effect, and starts to catch on fire, that, hey, listen, we can get these people, we can get people in office, we can get them out of office. It has the effect on the people of energizing them. And it also puts everybody else on notice that you are removable. Okay, because at the end of the day, our people need to understand that if we are not at the table, we are on the menu. So
Mm.
in that situation, everybody needs. I don't care if you run for dog catcher. I'm being funny, but I mean, whatever position is available. I ran for Congress as a felon and couldn't vote for myself in my own state, but I did it to give voice to. Uh, the injustice, and that I got quite a few votes, but even more than that, little Black girls saw me do that.
Yes.
Young Black women saw me do that. So if this man gets the sheriff's position, maybe it'll change the concept of how young Black men view police. But there is all sorts of positive outgrowths of that. We just have to identify them and kind of facilitate them along.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that is this. I can't hear you. Oh, wait a minute, Connie. I can't hear you. Can't hear you for some reason. I can't
Tanya,
hear
do you
you,
have your mic
Connie.
mute
Do you have your mic muted?
on the screen?
Because I don't have you muted in the stream. All right. Come back in. Come back in. Because sometimes it just takes the reboot
Okay.
to
Because
for her to
it
come back
has me at the bottom here too.
in.
But
Okay.
since I don't have my glasses on, I can't see, child.
That's okay. Okay. That is what. Let me tell you. All right. That's why I have these big behind glasses on because I cannot, but it doesn't matter because we got brains.
There you go. There you go. And we need to really collectively think about a Black woman's network. And I don't say that with any disrespect to the OWN network, but it's like so many people contact them so much to the point that's where I've gotten my apathy as far as trying to reach out. I'm like, we need to just build the platform from the ground up. It sounds kind of silly as I say it though, because it's like reinventing the wheel when people have such broad reach. But I think,
But we need
yeah,
more voices.
we do,
We
we
need
do.
different voices at the table. And that's what I
Yeah.
encourage my audience to do. I don't necessarily have to agree with you, but
Mm-hmm.
where we are right now in this revolution, all right, it is important for us to have all of the voices, as many voices with some input.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone isn't going to agree on everything.
Mm-hmm.
However, let's get the suggestions. Let's throw the box away. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Let's
And
throw the
and
box away.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you think that, because what I've noticed with people call it crab in the bucket, I don't like that saying, but do you think that Black people have, because there's advocacy organizations across the country, they're all working in silos. And I have to take that back to like other cultures and their businesses, and they're able to like work businesses together and make money, and then maybe branch off from there. Even our advocacy groups and our businesses and things, we can't come together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess my question would be, do you have like, when you reach out to people that are in your same industry and broadcast, are they black women in particular, or black folks in particular, are they willing to come in with you and be supportive, or do they just want to be seen on the show and then bounce out on you?
You know what? I would answer that two ways. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In general, as we are now, I agree that there is a distinct difficulty in getting people to, come out of their silo, share, and work together.
Right.
I believe, and this, I've seen this in corporate America. So this has been my experience. I have 45 years in corporate America. And what I saw was it was like pitting one against the other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which to me directly ties to the institutionalization, the mindset, the brainwashing that we
The
have.
Willie Lynch thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That comes that happens, that has
Mm-hmm.
happened. So that's what, how to answer that. Personally, I'm grateful it doesn't happen to me because my approach is one-on-one.
Right. Okay.
This is Tanya. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm even if you don't know me, once you get to know me or just see my work, I'm true. I'm straight up. And that's why I call it Talks with Tanya, because we're talking
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to allow you to do that. And it's important to me for people to share.
Right.
Okay. And I want to hear. And it is my belief because everything's going to be beautiful one day. I do believe
I
that
believe that.
we will get there, that enough of us will get there,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that
Mm-hmm.
we will be able to do that. And this now is our opportunity. So
It
I'm
is.
ready to mix this up because I'm going to bring Connie back on. Okay, this is like heaven to me right now. And then I'm also going to bring on Danielle Hall. Okay, this is our GOP candidate. Okay, for lieutenant governor
Hello.
here in the state of Delaware. And I just thought that this was the perfect group, not planned audience. Okay, to lend to
Mm-hmm.
this conversation, and particularly Danielle, because you kind of have an inside track in terms of the issues in Delaware as it relates to and criminal justice reform is just kind of the big umbrella. But just tell me a little bit, from your view, where we stand in Delaware.
Well, in Delaware, of course, we had the decriminalization of that a number of years back, which is timely. But I'm excited at the opportunity of taking the next logical step and getting it legalized here. I think that, of course, the economic piece of it is relevant to what Connie was speaking about. We can definitely see the advantages of that. And I think where we get hooked up, kind of messed up here in Delaware is the regulatory piece and also how we deal with DUI. They don't have the proper mechanism in place to determine whether or not people are driving under the influence, because as we know, metabolically, that stays in your system, for a lot longer time because it's fat soluble instead of water soluble. So I've seen it happen even with my oldest son. He got pulled over for a random traffic violation. I don't know if he had been smoking in his vehicle at one point or another, but the officer says, well, there's an odor here. And so he had him step out, put him through the sobriety piece of it. He passed the sobriety test, and he still sent him to the hospital where they drew his blood. And of course, it was still prevalent in his system. So, he got his first DUI, even though he was not under the influence at that moment. But see, the law is set up so that those trappings are in there. So even though there is a decriminalization of it, we're still seeing where we're losing our driving privileges and we're fined and we get caught up in the system that way. So, that's where we have to do better. And there are models that have already been created on how you can tell whether or not a person has that chemical active in their system and would be considered under the influence. But we have to deal with those kinds of things. And we've had, legislation that's been proposed to do the legalization of it. And we definitely have the medical marijuana piece of it taken care of. But the problem is that even with the medical marijuana community, especially as it pertains to veterans, we're seeing where you're having to get all of these documented independent doctors authorizations to even receive the medical marijuana card. So, there's trappings all the way across the spectrum when it comes to having that conversation about marijuana and how it should be regulated, how we should be testing for DUI. And it's a complex conversation that needs to be had because too many people are being caught up in the system for these types of infringements. And that's just a rolling cascade of effect all the way down the line.
Well, I think it's great because, now you're connected with Connie and you can have that conversation.
I'm super excited. I was anxiously waiting for this talk.
Wow.
The inside out. We lost Gwen there, but we're going to keep the conversation going. So there was
She sent a text message needing the link sent
The
to
link?
her again because she needed to get on her laptop.
okay. All right. Tell her, look in her email.
Okay.
Tell her, look in her email. I had sent it to her email.
Well, the last one you sent me didn't have a link in it.
Oh, okay. So let me I'll resend it. So
Okay.
in the meantime, Danielle, you were talking about we're at a tipping point. What did you mean by that?
Well, this political climate that we are in right now is screaming to people that are now wide awake and very in tune with all of the happenings. There's all kinds of hot topic discussions that are being had, and those discussions are just robust. And this is the time where people who are incumbents and seeking to be reelected are having to defend their track records. And there are just a number of things, just talking about George Floyd and the fact that people are saying, I can't breathe. Well, they're saying I can't breathe because they're economically suffocating.
Right.
There are things that are going on in the social justice spectrum that just have not been effectively dealt with over decades. And so right now, the ask is what is important. And the first ask that we can make is that we have good representation in office. And so, I've been giving people a charge and a challenge to do their homework on the candidates that are up this cycle and to be able to see who best aligns with what they feel is missing and what's needed, and that they have good strategies on how to deal with that. Because as you can see, and Tanya, you and I have talked about this, we can't be fooled by the gestures, okay? Removing some statues, changing some branding on a syrup bottle or some Uncle Ben's rice, those are gestures. They don't even begin to scratch the surface of the underlying problems that we have. And some people are enamored by the fact somebody's paying attention. Well, that didn't really change things in the global aspect of anything. So, the ask is very important. We have these politicians' ears, they're listening, and the ask has to be something of substance. And we have to have a demand that we are going to hold these people accountable. We cannot have our votes bought anymore. You're not going to pander to us as a community of color. Black folks are awake. Now, I just want them to get themselves registered. and do their part to make sure that they get to that ballot box. That's what I mean by a tipping point. You know, this thing is going to have the propensity of changing history for good or for bad. So I'm hoping that we will demand that it'll turn it towards good moving forward.
And Connie, your initiatives with regard to the vote.
Yes, I
Okay.
wanted to.
Tell us about that and how it's all related to, everything that has to do with the criminal justice system.
Sure. So I've been pushing an initiative called Guaranteeing Your Vote. Um, in addition to just being registered in Oklahoma, I'm encouraging people to also sign up to vote by mail. They don't have to vote by mail, just sign up in order for some other things to kick in, like 30-day advance notice of every election, an opportunity to sit in groups and talk about what's on the ballot, a way to ensure that your voting records are in order when you make that application. Um, and then, in Oklahoma, the law provides that you can hand deliver your ballot up until 5 o'clock the day before. Under COVID, the requirement for a notary is changed so that if someone is quarantined because of COVID, they simply have to have two signature witnesses, the same way a person would who was incapacitated or unable to get out. So there's so many features because what I found out in my 2014 U.S. Senate race, where 29% of the people showed up to vote, lowest in the history of the state, right? That people are registered, they just not voting. So we're pushing guaranteeing their vote. We used Juneteenth, and we're going to replicate it on Indigenous Peoples Day. And I just want to say, Black folks was here before Indians ever got here. So they're not the only indigenous people. We are all indigenous people, and trying to deal with us in terms of black, red, or brown keeps us down, right?
Oh,
But on Indigenous Peoples Day, October 12th, we will have the same push where we're asking everybody to either vote by mail that day or to be sure and apply to vote by mail by that day. That is 3 weeks before the election. We want our people, our community voting in such numbers that we decide the election long before November 3rd. We did that for Juneteenth because Oklahoma, in the black community, was the last place where the slaves were freed. And as a result of our being freed and the 1866 treaty that required the Indians to give black folks lands and adopt them into their tribes, places like Greenwood, Black Wall Street, and 59 all black towns came into being. So, given that reality, our message to black people was vote. Be sure, guarantee your vote. Demonstrate the power of the black voice because we had a ballot initiative on Medicaid expansion, right? Which COVID-19 showed how disparately affected our communities are by disease and other conditions, and that ballot measure barely passed by 1%
Wow.
because in the rural areas they believe that if they voted yes on Medicaid expansion, that they would be voting yes for Nancy Pelosi and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, that's the kind of dumbing down information that keeps getting delivered to people in these underserved areas, and their hospitals are closing, and they voted overwhelmingly not to approve Medicaid expansion. So we use that vote though to encourage black people to guarantee their votes by signing up to vote by mail. So when I see registration drives, I'm like, yes, but every registered voter in Oklahoma should also be signed up to vote by mail. And we had record absentee ballot voting this time. I know there are some concerns with who the number 46 minus one appointed as United States Postal General, Postmaster, and whether he'll be able to, suppress that process in some ways. But, you know, my whole deal is if we overwhelm the system and if we vote early, we'll have time to know. And in Oklahoma, you can track your ballot from the time you mail it in to the time that it's counted. But we'll have time to know if something irregular is going on in the process. So that's our program.
So with regard to, what is it that is the most key for our constituents to know about with regard to cutting, like, just kind of choking, choking back the institution from continuing to kind of just bring us in, en masse? How can we cut that out?
So when you say institution,
well, the police, the administration, because we know they come in through the police. Well, actually, it starts in school, actually. But what, so much of my audience is your average citizen, okay?
okay.
And then when something happens to them, okay, and they have that experience, what are some of the steps that they should take to immediately put themselves in the best position so that, they're not their child, or they're not in the midst of this, getting set up to go away?
It speaks to our economic inability in the system because it's about money. Um, public defenders in Oklahoma are connected to the DA's office. And it's really a turnstile operation anymore with Black and brown people going into incarceration. And wow, our system is so full of so many deficiencies. Like right now, people are laboring in jail behind COVID, and the jail environment is a terrible environment. It's being restructured, but because of COVID, they're not getting to go to prison. They would rather go to prison. People are held in jail in Oklahoma for inability to pay their bond. So bond reform is a piece of future criminal justice reform efforts. But for the most part, gosh, if you don't have money, you pretty much burnt in the system in Oklahoma. You got to be able to pay for the representation, and it's all a racket. I think the attorneys are in on it, and the judges and the DAs, and it's an impossible piece that the way to change at this point is through the political process and people running for office, because it's not just impacting us anymore, it's impacting them too.
It is.
And they're finding themselves on our side because they literally are experiencing what we've been experiencing for years.
And in Danielle, in Delaware, okay, there is, and I believe this actually speaks to it, because, all right, so now you're out of prison, but or you're trying to get out. What can be done at like the parole, at the level of parole, in our state?
Well, I think it's two prongs. I think when, and I was having a conversation with someone who worked in the prison system, and there have been several attempts to get some services in place when a person is a year out from being released. And so we talked about things like making sure, you know, their documents were in order, that they had a birth certificate, a driver's license, a social security card. We also talked about the different programmatic trusts that are available through some of our institutions here to get them certifications before, you know, they are released, like a flagger's license. There's a partnership with VOTEC, the vocational school, to do masonry and those kinds of things. And there's a waiting list and a high demand for those kinds of things at this point. So there's more of a demand than there are actual spots. And of course, COVID kind of derailed everything because they couldn't attend their trainings and so forth. So to move toward your latter question, after we've got people to a point to where they can be released and have some kind of a pathway to not reoffend and contribute to the recidivism rate, and then end up, you know, right back in the system. On the other side is a mentorship piece that would allow a mentor to assist in that piece that they have where they have the probation or whatever to serve after they're released. So they follow them and they have a reporting mechanism. I think another thing here in Delaware, I don't know how it is in Oklahoma, but there are a lot of people who violate their probation because of transportation. So say, for instance, you live in a rural area and you're not where you can hop on a bus to make your appointment or get to your job. And if that's a requirement that needs to be met to satisfy the conditions of your probation, then people are violated and they end up back, you know, on the other side of it. So we're having some conversations about, you know, just addressing those pieces to kind of help folks when they have done their time and they have paid their debt to society. And then, of course, you have a lot of folks who ended up getting, you know, drug charges or those things. And the young lady that was on here that was speaking about, you know, how she'd had that past to deal with. The pardon piece is important because you have people who have served their debt. They have went to school, they've educated themselves, and then they have that criminal record piece that prevents them from being able to get suitable employment in the areas that they've diligently earned the right to be able to do that. So we have to kind of start crafting the narrative so that when people have served their time, they're not subjected to yet another life sentence on the other side of doing their time and not being able to get, you know, the better paying jobs to support their families. I mean, if you're not willing to identify that that is a problem and overcome it, then it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And, you know, to the point that was made earlier, that the jails are a business, a very lucrative business. And there are people who are seeing positive streams of income and revenue generated by keeping those incarceration numbers high. So what is the end goal? You know, do we want people to come out and have bettered themselves and be able to go on and move forward in a positive way and become good citizens? Or is the goal to keep our numbers consistent so that the jails are full? That's the question. And I ask it to people who are in office because they have to be called out on the mat to answer that question. What is the end goal?
So, Connie, you have had either some success or an idea with regard to setting up, I think you call it supportive services for the folks that have been released or about to be released.
Right. That was the thesis of my master's program, that people returning from prison need more than just a job and housing. They need supported employment. They need supported housing. They need counseling services. That's what Gwen alluded to in terms of PTSD and potential meltdowns behind what happened to her children in foster care while she was incarcerated. And all of us are prone to have meltdown on any given day, depending on what the traumatizing event is. So that's a real part of people's recovery, is to make sure they're supported. People's reentry is to make sure that they are supported in that process. So, and we're even looking at the next horizon as the industrial hemp piece space, and even growing medicinal cannabis as an area in which to now employ and train people coming back into society, because that industry is poised to really take off in Oklahoma. It's just that, people in our community, and for various reasons, including having their heads still in the sand under the leadership of some of the faith leaders right now, but they're not participating. They're not having access to the medicine that helps them stop depending on opioids. And people in our age group, Tanya, gosh, if they've had one surgery, they're opioid addicted.
Yes.
So to offer this as an alternative medicine and to have our community buy into it is still a challenge. But we want to see it as a mechanism through which to, number one, let's talk about reparations for people who've been now wrongfully convicted all of these years behind something that's now legal.
Right.
And let a part of that money go towards helping these people come back into society and participate as tax-paying people with a meaningful skill and job. Another piece that happens in Oklahoma is people's ability to vote is interrupted until their sentence is over. Now, people can vote again after their sentence expires, but the other rest of the story on that is that they tell people you can never vote again in Oklahoma, and that is just not true. But in Gwen's case, for example, she got 45 years probation, so her sentence is still active and she can't vote. So it really was about interrupting and suppressing the vote, as well as privatization and the industrial complex profits and whatever, um, in terms of the impact on our communities.
So the question for our audience, what question should we be asking the folks that are running for office or that are in office with regard to their stance on, the justice system as it stands today? Let's give them some tools and some questions that they can ask and raise and see where people really stand.
Well, Danielle just alluded to one with regard to the DUI process that's under review. Interestingly, Danielle, our legislator here just got funding approved to do a study of this DUI technology in Oklahoma, versus spending funding. And then, the scientific basis for that is just not there. But basis versus spending that money on programming that helps people, they're trying to spend it on ways to, like, further criminalize or ensure that people get locked up. And again, there is no test that can discriminate between whether you smoked it 5 minutes ago and whether you smoked it 5 weeks ago. So I think that's a question that constituents in the area could be prepared to ask. I think they should listen and see if the candidate offers a position statement on the issue. Uh, and then when they don't, ask them, well, what is your position on the medicinal uses of cannabis or the economic benefits in the cannabis industry and mass incarceration behind simple possession of cannabis? Those are three questions, like the medicinal, the economic, and the criminal justice pieces. Danielle, what do you think?
I agree 100%. I have been doing a deeper dive into how they can test. I'm not going to quote exactly where it's from or give that information, but from what I can understand, there is a test that will be able to delineate if the active ingredient in the THC component of it, if that is active in your system, and I think it's accurate for like the prior day or so, and anything that's been inactive that's just lingering in your system. I think that they can distinguish whether or not there's a chemical presence there. I'll have to get that information for Tanya so she can post it up later on. But I always like people to fact check. But they have places where they are able to do some testing that kind of gets around that piece of it. And it's just a matter of being able to duplicate the models in the states where it's working and just carry it on over to the rest of us that are floundering. We shouldn't be trying to recreate the wheel, in other words, you know.
Yeah.
And then the other asset I think that's critical to the people who are out there, if you start looking at this thing from a socioeconomic standpoint, the achievement gap in education is critical, because you're seeing the fact that, and Tanya and I have spoke about this before, you know, the whole narrative about the school to prison pipeline. So if we can catch these kids when they're younger and address whatever education deficiencies that they are having in a way that's meaningful, then we can head off the path, so to speak, if we look down the road at some of the potential shortcomings and shortfalls and pitfalls that we've set our young people up for just by not educating them properly. Here in the state of Delaware, 40% of our high schoolers graduate on time and on grade reading. That means that 60% of our young people are missing the mark where education is concerned. We have a severe problem here that our kids are not college ready or job ready. You know, we have to hold these politicians accountable for how our education dollars are spent here, because we are among the highest of the nation per student for education costs, but we're not seeing the results on the other side of being at the top of the spectrum when it comes to achievement. We're actually at the bottom. So, you know, you're going to have, I think that the ask that the voters need to really put out there is, what are you doing to address, you know, Delaware shortcomings? Why is it that we can't get businesses to come here to improve jobs? People are saying, well, you know, folks need to make more per hour. In order for us to do that, we've got to develop an infrastructure here for job creation that will give a higher paying job availability. You know, these are the kinds of things that I'm challenging the voters to say, hey, my bottom line is hurting. What are you doing to change that and to make them say, well, this is my plan? You know, having that position paper, having those points put out. You know, Tanya and I also have talked about the fact that one of the highest dollar amount on our state budget are social programs here, particularly in Medicaid. We have it set up here in the state of Delaware where people are trapped on poverty and there's these programs, because if they make $1 over a threshold, they go back $1,000 a month in co-pays and trying to, you know, get a health plan. And nobody's going to do that. So we incentivize people to stay stuck on these programs, and we don't have means testing that would move us to a place where people can become self-sufficient. So, you know, these are the things that I encourage people to ask. And, you know, I told Tanya before, poverty is not discriminatory. There are a lot of poor people in this state that are not Black. And if we would just get to the premise of the underlying socioeconomic issues, you know, we offer a pathway to prosperity for people all across the board. And of course, you know, we can you know, color it in a racial picture. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist, because I wake up in my beautiful brown skin every day with a whole set of things that I have to overcome, you know, because of it. But, you know, if you give people an opportunity to improve themselves and so that they can find that hand up, I think that, you know, we'll be able to see some progress. But the voters, again, we have to make those demands. We have to be crystal clear in what our ask is, and we have to make sure that we're diligent to hold these politicians accountable after November. You know, my telephone number has been the same for 15 years, and I tell people quick, you know, when you guys put me in that office and that position of decision making, and I'm not doing what you feel I need to be doing, call a sister. Tell me what's going on and where you think I need to be doing something better. And voters have to do that. We got to start holding these elected officials accountable.
What I find very interesting, it doesn't matter what part of the country we're in. It doesn't matter what part of the country we're in. The issues are the same. And at the end of the day, you know, we're talking about, we're talking about prison reform in a certain context. But at the base of this, in my opinion, it is about economics. It is about economics. Connie, you said it, okay? Daniela said it. Gwen has said it. And that's what it is about. So there's just not one pat answer, you know, one pat solution. However, the one thing we all need to be doing is voting.
Yes. Yes.
We need to vote. And we need to vote at every level, you know, from Gwen was saying, from dog catcher, okay, you know, up into the White House. And if we don't ask the questions, nothing will change. This is an opportunity that has opened up for us in terms of the discussion. I think there's great discussion because I didn't really recognize the position we were here in Delaware with regard to medicinal marijuana. Connie, you have, you created the road for that. You sacrificed a lot for that to happen in Oklahoma, and you know where it's working. You know, you've seen other states where it's working better. Okay. And so why don't you tell us just a little bit about that before, we kind of wrap it up. Tell us about that and where you see the benefit of that movement and how it helps us in terms of criminal justice reform.
So I guess when we think about it in hindsight, decrim did take place in Oklahoma before medical legalization. It was voted on, but it literally didn't happen until a year after medical legalization. So it's just a hodgepodge of ways it rolls out in different places. We started with CBD under the agricultural hemp program for medication for children, like I was telling you. And so for 3 years we had CBD shops, and then when we passed medical, they morphed into dispensaries that had CBD and licensed medical cannabis operations. So the criminal justice piece, like Gwen was saying, it's it's been slow played in order, we believe, to give those in power time to reposition, to retool, to ensure that their money streams are still in place. And in some cases, they release people and then pick them back up immediately because they had other warrants in other areas, right? So it was like a disjointed, half-ass effort uh, to to be true about what the people voted. So with medicinal, again, we don't have the investment or the buy-in in our community in ways that I believe could um, could could decrease incarceration. People are still getting accosted and arrested, and you know, marijuana may be the potential, or it may be the thing they say, but then they're looking for other things as well. Like we said, outstanding warrants, or just because you look nervous. And all that takes is to then put you into the system, and then the money kicks in. Then you have to get an attorney, you have to bond out, you have to maybe lose your job, you know, you have to sit in jail if you can't bond out. Then the financial pieces kick in, right? So the next thing on the horizon here, and there's a push by outside interests to legalize adult use. Our medical program is still in need of tweaking. Um, Personally, I would like to see us adopt some policy that deals with cannabis and end of life care, especially under hospice and Medicare, where at the end of life, a person can get any and every drug, no matter how much they want, free of charge under Medicare. I think that ought to be extended to cannabis, and we ought to put the training in place for practitioners to know what to help people with. We need better reciprocity with regard to our medical licenses. I ought to be able to, people from Puerto Rico ought to be able to use their licenses in Oklahoma just like I was able to do in Puerto Rico just by showing my card. In Oklahoma, you have to apply a month in advance. You have to pay $100. It's temporary, so that's a policy piece. Even a good Samaritan law, whereas right now, somebody's having a seizure, maybe on the side of the road, and someone comes up and offers them uh, RSO, Rick Simpson oil, which has been indicated to cure cancer. Right now, that's a felony for them to share that medicine. But literally, I saw that happen, and I saw a lady come out of a seizure because somebody standing by just happened to have some RSO. So there are these kinds of forward-thinking policies that are yet to be put in place in Oklahoma. Deliveries. We tried to do that this past session, and the language was flawed because they also included a provision taking out the HIPAA requirements, right? So that bill got vetoed. But again, there are some positive things that still need to be done about medical cannabis before we even consider looking at any other category like adult use, because that will really put a lot of the entrepreneurial efforts that are going on out here out of business. Like out of 9,000 something licenses, dispensary licenses in the United States, 5,600 of them are in Oklahoma. They may not all be operational, but it just lets you know to what extent this industry is alive and well and growing and booming in Oklahoma.
And the things that are happening to keep our people in prison. I have a particular heart for women and how that is impacting the entire household. For something that should not happen for them. And then, and their children, and then that leads it, the children being into the foster care system, and exposing them to so many things.
In the pipeline, going into the pipeline.
Into the pipeline. And I'll tell you that just from my own perspective, two things, and I appreciate the audience hanging in here, but these are important issues, and it's my show. The two things. The first thing is with regard to end of life issues, and I shared this with Connie that, my mom, when she was in transition, she was allergic to morphine, which is the primary, drug that they used when, in hospice. And she would have horrible reactions. And even with trying different things, she would have withdrawal reactions to the, the other meds, because you try one thing and then the other. And that was a horrible experience. When I knew that, if we had cannabis, if we had the ability to do that, we would not have been through over 2 months, of pretty much torture, okay, trying to find the right thing. So with our senior citizens, that is that's critical. And then for our youth, everything, when their household is impacted, the children are impacted. And we don't have the supportive services in place. And, I catch them, and I can't say where it is, at a very early stage in a program that really does not put them into the system. But I know immediately, okay, I can tell in less than 30 seconds based on the conversation, who I'm having the conversation with. Most of the time it's the grandparent, okay? Or someone else caring for the child, and it is a cry for help that the children have, and we are not addressing it. So when we talk about the criminal justice system, we really are talking about not only the folks that are behind the bars, okay, but those that are outside, okay, left in a situation that continues, okay, continues to build up the next wave. And there's some things that need to be done in order to, bring some relief there. So I thank you, Danielle. I was just like, you want to come on?
Yeah, I know. I was flooding you with questions. I know.
It was good. No, it was good. This is my heart's desire that we would have that. I think that you and Connie should talk because,
Yes.
she has, information in terms of, a lot of information in terms of what she has done. I'm so sorry that Gwen wasn't able to get back on. We are going to have Gwen back. Okay, Connie, you just have to keep coming back.
And Danielle, you should be sure and post your webpage for donations.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I should have that still here. What is it?
It's DanielleForDelaware.com. She hooked me up the last time she had the show on. She had all my plugs in. And Tanya, please share with Connie my contact information.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. There we go. There we go.
Is there a first statewide campaign?
No.
Okay. Cool.
She's been at it before.
You said is this
your first statewide campaign?
I actually ran a candidate's statewide campaign, and then I ran for a local office in the 18 cycle for state senator. So this is not my first rodeo. I've been at it for quite a while, and it's my passion to have a voice at the table that represents hardworking families. So I'm dedicated to the cause.
Cool. Congratulations.
She's amazing. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. And another thing.
You all have a pretty high juvenile justice rate, don't you?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. There are a lot of things that need to be overhauled, and one of the saddest pieces of it, and I'm going to say this quickly so we can get off of here, but the juvenile records are supposed to be sealed unless there's other offenses that they commit as adults. They can use that for sentencing purposes. But these kids, my oldest son, I feel bad for him. He was the cute little curly head kid that got picked on, and then he got tired of being bullied. He was a straight A student doing well and all of that. And then he started getting into these back and forth exchanges, kind of trying to defend himself and say, I'm not the little kid that you're going to pick on. He got into a back and forth exchange at the middle school level, and they charged him with reckless, what was it? I'm not sure. I can't remember what it was. But it was a misdemeanor.
It created a record.
Yes, it did. It absolutely did. So, when you get these kids and you start them off at 12 and 13 years of age in the system, that just sets them up for more and more and more and more. And it didn't matter what he did from there. There was a perception of who he was based on that situation, and it's sad. We got to do better with our juvenile track and get them out of these courts and get them into something else altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And they took away the behavioral health specialists in the schools and replaced them with law enforcement resource officers here too.
We have both. We've had resource officers, and from what I understand, um, one of those one of those things that have been talked about here after George Floyd was that they wanted those officers taken out of the school. So I don't think when they do return that they'll have the resource officers there. And I've challenged the police departments here with the fact that when my older set of children were growing up, we had the DARE program and other warm fuzzies with the police, because the only interaction that these kids see the police and is on an enforcement piece. They never have an opportunity to spend those moments where they get to see the other side of policing. And I told them that they needed to strengthen the community policing rapport with the community and have more contact outside of just law enforcement, and that would improve relations between the community and the police.
There's so many ideas.
Fund those activities instead of the other ones. That's what defund is.
Well, that's the sad part here, is that we don't have a statewide mechanism that offers equal resources across the state to each different jurisdiction. So depending on where your jurisdiction is, they have their pot of money. If they say they don't have the money to fund like the Police Athletic League or the DARE programs or the gang resistance programs, then it just doesn't happen. So where I'm living across the street is one jurisdiction, and behind me is another. And the kids that live behind me have more resources for those things, and the ones across the street have nothing. So, I mean, our kids are left out here just to get in trouble. There's nothing that they can go to, no community centers that aren't priced and cost prohibitive. I mean, what else are these kids going to do but get in trouble if they don't have something constructive to do with their time and places to go?
So you look at community development block grant funding?
There is, and it again, here in this state, resources are not accessible. They're not highly publicized. They're not in places where you would know how to go and get to them. And then if you get to them, the application and the requirements to meet and satisfy to be a recipient of those grant funds is so extraordinarily difficult that even if you have one of those good ideas and a business plan and how to execute it, you can't get the money. It's very sad here.
Okay.
You know what, Danielle? You should probably talk to Tanya Williamson.
We connected.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, she was right. She's a great resource here. This is what makes me happy about this this whole thing. I think that I feel that this discussion really needs to be broader. I do have some. Well, we're going to bring Gwen back, based on her schedule. And then, another a couple of gentlemen, brothers that have some really good, experience and information about prison reform. I want to use my platform in a way that we can really share, with the people, what is going on, where they can get involved. Because there is work to do. There's just a tremendous amount of work to do. So I just want to thank you, ladies. Connie, Danielle, this has really been a blessing for me. To my audience, thank you so very much for your support. Make sure that you continue to share this, like Tanya Inspires. Any ideas that you have or suggestions that you have, I'm open to it. You can just go to Tanya Inspires, leave me a message. But everybody knows how to get me. Just reach out. So thank you again, ladies. Thank you, audience. Remember, everyone, stay inspired.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, ladies. Bye-bye.